Good evening, one and all. How you doing? Nah, that's not how we do it. We get it started like this. Yes, you are now listening to the sounds of Sports Reports is Ordered. And sometimes, depending on who you talk to, they might call us Sports Reports Disordered. You know, like just be like that sometimes. But myself, 2-5, aka the Aggie Daddy, your unorthodox statistician going left so much you thought I was Southpaw. And I brought along with me the one and only world-renowned Even Kill, born in Texas, raised in VA, representing New Jerusalem, and all you romantics out there, pay your homage to New Jersey, the first state with a drive-in theater. Yes, Sports Reports is ordered. Tonight, we're going to talk about Super Bowl favorites. We're going to talk about college football playoff picks. It's that time. But of course, we're going to get this thing started off with get it off my chest. But before we do that, like, review, subscribe, share, rate. Do all the free things. Do all the good things. So, Mr. Logical,
you
know, we always talk about this stupid ass college football calendar, you know, that throws the transfer portal upon us basically as soon as the season ends. So you already got some NFL prospects that aren't going to play in the bowl games because they don't want to risk injury. So then you got guys trying to leave as well so that they can enroll into their new schools, so they can be available for spring practice. But there was a couple of things that stood out to me. So real quick, Dabo Swinney actually took a transfer?
Listen.
What?
He knew it was going to happen.
What? But Bo Pribula, you know, we talked about him, you know, a couple of months ago. He came in for Drew Aller in relief in the Wisconsin game for Penn State and led them to victory. Well, he's now in the transfer portal, you know, so cross your fingers, cross your heart. Hopefully Drew Aller doesn't get hurt during these here playoffs. Last year, we had a similar situation where Malik Murphy, not Arch Manning, was the backup. And then he decided after the season, I got to get in the portal. I know Arch is taking over. I'm out of here. So Texas was in this position. Luckily, Quinn Ewers didn't get hurt. But luckily for us, Sark doesn't necessarily win the big games. So it all worked out anyway.
Yeah.
You know, but some things that stood out to me about that is Preston Stone, the backup at SMU, is also in the transfer portal. The difference is he's still going to play if necessary, whereas Pribula is gone. So James Franklin talked about it, and, you know, that's what I was waiting for because I didn't know if this was a, hey, if you're going in the portal, just get out of here. But Drew Aller announced yesterday that he's coming back next year, so it made more sense that Pribula was leaving. But what didn't make sense, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, Charles Huff at Marshall, you know, didn't have a contract coming into this year, you know, took the team to the Sun Belt Championship, took the job at Southern Miss, and then all the players damn near jumped into the portal. So they had to cancel their bowl game against Army, which allowed 5-7 Louisiana Tech to take the bowl game and do the honorable thing that Florida State should have did last year in the Orange Bowl, right? So you got that going on. So I imagine the AD's in trouble. You know, there's going to be something going on with his job security, you know. Correct. And then the last thing that stood out to me was I was reading something earlier, said that Brian Kelly down at LSU is going to donate $1 million of his own money to help LSU grab some players. So, you know, like, hey, put your money where your mouth is, I guess. You know, this man trying to win national title. He figure I should put up $1 million now, you know what I'm saying, because I'm going to lose the millions later if we don't do nothing.
Man, he putting that $1 million up because, you know, you're about to lose your job. So he can go in there like, listen, I gave him $1 million because if you're LSU, you don't need his $1 million. You have boosters. Hell, Odell Beckham was on the field giving out thousands of dollars after they won the national
Yeah,
championship
yeah.
live on TV.
Yes,
Hit it.
we'll have to see. We'll have to see what revenue sharing looks like next year when it's in execution. But everybody's trying to get creative and create ways to make this beneficial to them. So that was all I had. Just as far as the transfer portal goes, just a few things that stood out to me over the last week or so.
I like Franklin's statement. He said, it wasn't particularly a bowl problem; it was a college football problem, because ultimately, if you're aware that this person's transferring from another school, they're an athlete, and their playoff, their bowl season, or their prior obligations to their previous schools do run into January, then there should be some form of exception for them. And I get that people say, "Oh, you can't keep giving these athletes exceptions." Well, they do. They do all the time. Like when they're on those road games, they get a tutor or multiple teachers assistants that travel with the team.
Mm-hmm.
They get to probably do more. They probably were doing a lot more satellite classes with basketball and different academics. Like everybody, like it's not the same for everybody. So if you're setting the rules saying, "Oh, this student has to be enrolled by this date," you get a premature enrollment agreement in place that says, as soon as my college football obligation is complete with previous school, I will join your school. If it's a matter of some assignments, like how many assignments could this person miss in a week in the January post holidays? Professors aren't running back trying to give out term papers like you just started.
Right.
So it's no different than a person being sick for a few days saying, "Hey, I can't come to school for a week." Like
Mm-hmm.
the way we as humans talk about rules, we act as if we didn't establish those rules in place. It's like we wrote this stuff. Like I talk
Mm-hmm.
about it at work all the time when these guys are painting themselves into the corner with the verbiage of these paragraphs. I'm like, how about you guys write the paragraph different? You give your
Mm-hmm.
input. You have these meetings
Mm-hmm.
multiple times a year. So college football, you have these meetings. Put in input like, hey, you can sign a the same way when high school players say they're gonna commit to a school. Just sign that same commitment under the terms of any exceptions. Hey, obligation to prior football school. Once they are complete, this individual will enroll in new school.
Right. And
You want to name by spring
bonjour.
practice, which is March.
And bonjour, mademoiselle. Merci beaucoup. We appreciate you. So yes, now for something that Mr. Logical has been waiting for about 5 or 6 weeks now. He's not the only one popping bottles.
It's oh man. The this is a thing. A few weeks ago, Mike sent me a screenshot of a comment somebody made on our YouTube page when I was talking about the Bears. And I said, hey, the coach, quarterback, GM relationship, the whole way they went about getting Caleb Williams and not really supporting them. And I ran off a few, thoughts about the subject. And this guy commented on the thing. He was like, the more and more I listen to this guy really knows football. And I sit up here and talk about like I know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm talking about. But it feels good when somebody else like, you know what, this dude really he made a lot of sense. Watching the Falcons do exactly what I said they would do improperly at the beginning of the year, it gives me a little solace. Like at least it's clear that you're all doing this wrong. So last night, like I said, I normally watch the games on mute. But last night I watched it. I was sitting in my living room watching. When I watch it on my phone, I normally watch it on mute because I'm watching something on TV and I had the game on mute. But I was watching it on TV in my living room. And Dan Orlovsky and Lou Riddick, they were both saying the same things that I've been saying for weeks. There's no confidence, there's no continuity, and there's no deliberate action to get the playmakers that you drafted in the top 10. Keep in mind, 4 drafts in a row, Atlanta's taken an offensive player 8 or higher. So 3 guys at 8, 1 guy at 4. And none of them are, they're not deliberately, collectively deployed upon the opposing defense simultaneously. Couple of games, a game against Tampa Bay, I think Kyle Pitts had a couple of touchdowns. I think Drake London, he's getting a lot of receiving yards, getting a lot of targets, but it's not deliberately, I'm attacking you with this player. The way Philly would attack defenses with Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson never went 3 quarters without a deep shot. Like everyone talks about the Michael Vick 6 touchdown game against the formerly known as Redskins back in the day. The first long touchdown was a play action, deep shot to Deshaun Jackson. Like, we're going to put this in place immediately. Atlanta never did that. So now they're benching Kirk Cousins because last night, I think he had like 15 pass attempts, maybe 16. Many of them on third down, many of them incomplete, a lot of punts, a lot of field goal attempts, missed field goals. They were up. And the whole time Orlovsky was like, I get it. You probably can write this in as a win when you come play the Raiders. They're down to the third string quarterback. So many injuries. The defensive players are gone. But this is a game where
and
you
we
need
get
to
Raiders
establish
Jags this
confidence.
weekend.
It's the race for first place, the first draft pick.
Yeah.
So the fact that even they were saying like, yo, this guy doesn't have any confidence at all. And
I don't know why coaches are like this.
as far as,
Like because I take it back. I'm just going off of the point that you made earlier about how they don't deliberately employ or deploy all their players at the stars at the same time. So it made me think of when you said that. The first thing that popped into my mind was the national title game, USC against Texas. Reggie and Lindale both weren't on the field
on that 4th and 1.
On that 4th and 1. And it was like
Reggie Bush on the field makes 3 people have to focus at least for a half second on him.
Especially when everybody knows that you're giving Lindale the ball.
We all knew it. But it's like, once again, if you put Bijan, Drake London, Kyle Pitts in some kind of trips formation, the defense has to respect the talent and the size of all of them, even if you're not collectively in a groove. The offensive coordinator is never in a groove. Ben Johnson with the Lions, every week they're giving you some new. Yeah, they're giving you some trick plays, but they're getting the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs. They're getting the ball to Montgomery. They're getting Amon-Ra. Granted, they have Jared Goff, who's playing with a lot of confidence, but you're gonna get action from the offensive side of the ball when you play Detroit. Last night, it felt as if they sat down and had a conversation saying, hey, Kurt, this was going to happen. We want to keep you under 20 pass attempts. We're going to run these guys 40 times because we don't want to make any mistakes.
Why isn't Bijan the new Christian McCaffrey?
Because you got to be creative enough offensively, and the Falcons simply aren't. We have a first-year offensive coordinator, play caller. You have a retread coach. It's just a lot of people who are operating as if getting fired in the NFL or as a coach, you're still getting paid. So if I'm Raheem Morris, dog, you signed me to like a 4 or 5 year deal.
Let it all hang out.
Pull your balls out and like fucking let's go. Let's do this. And it's like, nope. We're going to make all these bad moves and try to rationalize and justify it because the fans, to being a Falcons fan is tough. Because it's not a lot of expectation when you're a Falcons fan. But it's very clear. Like, they put up a stat last night. Atlanta is last in like quarterback pressures and sacks for like the last couple of years. But yet the last 4 years, they take offensive players, and then they don't like I said, they don't deploy them. Some like so last night was like it was clear that there was no confidence in the quarterback, and the quarterback had no confidence in himself. So going to Penix just lets me know that somebody's not going to be in the Falcons organization next year. Hopefully, because somebody got to go.
I had to change my channel real quick because Memphis just went up 17-0 on West Virginia. 10 minutes left in the second quarter. So, I had to get up out of there and maybe I can catch some of this NBA Cup.
I think it's at halftime.
But yeah, so, the Falcons, and they still have a tough road to hoe, if you will. Tampa, surmounted them for first place.
Tampa's winning the division.
You got Washington on the schedule. You got Carolina one more time, I believe.
Carolina's going to beat them.
Maybe, and
like so I didn't lose faith in my team.
And then, of course, you should beat the Giants this week, though.
I wish that game was here at Go.
I mean, that would be so Falcon, though. You know what I mean? Like, we talked about this, like, when they played the Saints, like, it would be so Falcon to lose the game to the team that just fired their coach.
And the problem is there seems to be a Super Bowl hangover that's impacting people who had nothing to do with the Super Bowl. Very similar to how we talked about Dallas. I remember someone talking about this at the beginning of the year, one of the pundits. But either it was last season or the beginning of this year, but I think he made a very poignant point. It was that he thinks that the current Cowboy players are somewhat carrying the burden of the playoff failures of like previous Cowboy teams, because that's all that people talk about leading up to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like these guys just inadvertently take on this burden. And I feel the same with the Falcons, because it looks exactly the same with different coaches, different play callers, different quarterbacks. It just seems like last night they almost lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
Desmond
Ritter.
If Desmond Ritter had any presence as a quarterback in the pocket, he would have beat them. But it was one point into the third quarter before he targeted a wide receiver. He has the same problem as Kirk Cousins. It's like, you're back there because you are the next. You're available. You're a quarterback, but you don't have any confidence in what you're doing. And like, I'm gonna talk about a couple other guys later. Like, how I talked about Jordan Love. Guys blitzing right up the middle. He just dipped his shoulder, kept the ball in, reset his feet, slid up, do a dot to Christian Watson. These guys, like certain guys at that position, are doing that. And Desmond Ritter and Kirk Cousins are a prime example of that. But they still almost lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, welcome to the Falcons, y'all. You know what I mean? So let's talk about some good teams. Buffalo, went into Ford Field the other day, and they showed Detroit who was who and what was what. Philadelphia had their Pennsylvania Commonwealth brothers come in.
Pennsylvania championship, as Mike Tomlin calls it.
Yeah, and they took down the Steelers. So what we wanted to talk about tonight is, I guess we'll talk about our Super Bowl matchup potentially, and we'll talk about teams that we think can go or win the Super Bowl. So as you can see here, I'm on FanDuel right now. We got Buffalo leading the club, at plus 450 for Super Bowl odds. Philly right behind them. Kansas City in front of Detroit, but actually tied with them.
So the Ravens, you bet $100, you get if they win, you get your $100 back plus $450.
Yeah. And then you got the Ravens and Vikings, and then you got Green Bay, Houston, Pittsburgh, so on and so forth. So, Mr. Logical, point blank right now, how many teams can actually win the Super Bowl this year?
I have 7 teams.
7.
I got 3 AFC teams, and I got 4 NFC teams. Yeah.
Siete?
That's it. That's all I got.
Who are these teams?
Well, I got Kansas City just because they're 13-1. They seem to be able to just pull magic out of a unicorn's ass anytime they need to. I got Buffalo because they have my preseason MVP because he's doing exactly what I said he would need, that I thought he would do for them, for him to win MVP, which is be anything and everything they need every week. Hell, one game he threw a pass for a touchdown, he rushed it for a touchdown, and he caught one technically, I guess, for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So they're Super Bowl, they're Superman, and Baltimore just because they're dynamic, just because Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, I think they can just if it starts early and it's flowing early, I think because they're so dynamic, they put so much pressure on the defense because you got to stay big to tackle Derrick Henry. You can't go nickel, you can't run dime all game long to stop Derrick Henry. But you're going to want to run dime and nickel to have speed on the field just in case Lamar breaks the pocket. So I think if Baltimore can counterpunch with whomever they're playing up against, they can take advantage of either one of those situations. So if you're running 3-4-4-3 and you load up to try to stop Derrick Henry and you get Lamar on the edge, now you got three linebackers trying to chase him versus going nickel, where you might get some of your lighter linebackers in there try to chase him, but very similar to how Dallas plays. You don't have a bunch of 250-pound backers, 40-pound backers in there. You run it with like guys for like hybrid safeties to keep match up with the speed of Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if they can work that counter punch appropriately, I think they can make a run. NFC, I got 4 teams, 3 teams with 12 wins: Detroit, Philly, and Minnesota. I think 12 wins puts you firmly in the middle of the Super Bowl conversation. My preseason pick was Kansas City versus Detroit, but it wouldn't shock me if a team out of Wisconsin ended up representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. I just like what Green Bay's doing. They're 10-4, and people are like, oh, they got 4 losses. The 3 12-win teams are the only teams they lost to. So any NFC championship game, from my estimation, will be some form of a rematch. Either Green Bay playing Philly again because they played them opening night, or a third game between Minnesota or Detroit. However, like the rankings and everything stack up in the playoffs and who ends up where. But if they play Detroit or Minnesota again, that'll be a third time. So I figured third time it's a toss up, even if they lost both ahead of the games. And then, like I said, Philly will be a rematch as well. And Philly, I like Philly, but Philly's starting to do the thing I don't like about what Philly does, like this us against the world thing, like just kind of out of nowhere. Like when we talk about AJ Brown's comments, talking about passing, and then he catches the touchdown, and they kind of go out of their way to do the kid and play dance in the middle of the field.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jalen Hurts comes to the press conference. Normally a pretty reserved guy, and I'm pretty sure he's tired of hearing the noise. But he was like, "That what y'all want? That's what y'all want to see." And that's how he started off. So it's like it just feels like I don't know where your focus is at.
So I got 4 in the possible. You know what I'm saying? So just right off top, Philadelphia, number 1 in total defense, number 6 in total offense. Buffalo, they got the MVP favorite, playing out of his mind, especially the last 2 weeks, both on the road. That's the kind of stuff that you're going to need to do because you might have to go to Arrowhead. Skipping around a little bit, Green Bay, for some of the same reasons that you mentioned. We saw Jordan Love step it up in the playoffs last year. He had his moment against San Francisco where he learned you can't throw across your body when Fred Warner is around, so hopefully he can carry that. Yeah, hopefully he can carry that into this postseason. The Baltimore Ravens, you mentioned how dynamic they are. Lamar Jackson, the other probable MVP, who they gave the MVP last year when I felt he didn't deserve it. He's having a way better year this year, 3 times the year, but he might not win the MVP this year. Figure that out. And then lastly, my possible, and this is everything has to go right. The Rams. You know, they got the experience.
Wait,
Super Bowl champions 2 years ago. They got the band back together.
Did you say Kansas City?
I did not say Kansas City.
Yeah.
What up, Mike?
I thought you didn't. I was like,
One Mike podcast, Mondays and Thursdays. Y'all get your gems, black on black news. No, not Kansas City, because I'm a big believer of you can keep playing with fire until you run out of matches. Now, so when I look at this, right, when I look at Kansas City, the 2 times Patrick Mahomes didn't make the Super Bowl, where they lose at?
Well,
they lost at Arrowhead both times. You know, Joe Burrow came through. You know, Tom Brady, obviously D Ford with the offsides of the century. You know, you had
very weird losses because that offside doesn't happen there in that Super Bowl that year. And then they had an 18-point lead on Cincinnati. And they got to tighten up. They do play poorly in the second half this year, too. So that doesn't bode well for them as far as history.
So there's a part of me that wants to say that Kansas City is doing the Shaq thing where, you know, the Lakers go through a 2 or 3 game losing streak in the regular season. And he's like, when the playoffs come, we're just going to hit the switch. You know, and so maybe Kansas City thinks they have a switch, but they don't. You know, I think that
there's a lack of chemistry on the back end.
And I think that Snead is a big loss.
Worthy seems to be in the wrong spot on a lot of his routes. Mahomes just throwing the ball with the expectation that Worthy's going to come up.
Got to flip the switch.
It goes straight to the sideline.
Yeah.
But he does a lot of this, and it's like 45 degrees of the sideline. He's open. He's beat his man. And Mahomes like, listen, I want to get the ball on you so the guy can't come under it. But he does this a lot. It happened a lot in this last week. It was like, so that's why he started throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. That's why that one pass that I guess they consider a run and not a pass. Because
hopefully Mahomes can play this week. I know he has the high ankle sprain, but they got the Texans coming in. You know, in preseason when I was feeling a little overzealous, you know, I picked the Texans to go into Arrowhead during the playoffs and end that shit. You know, probably not so much now. I don't feel that way now. But when I look at Kansas City, there's something missing. You know, they run the ball effectively when they need to, but I don't know if I can trust their running game to control a game if Mahomes doesn't have it going on or if he is a little banged up, you know, things along those lines.
Previous years, like, you know, to talk about some of your –
and I don't trust Hollywood Brown.
Your current Super Bowl contenders, they have an effective power punch on offense that's consistent. Buffalo has Josh Allen. Baltimore, they have Lamar and Derrick Henry. Like
when they use them.
When you use them, it's effective. You said the Rams, Stafford plays with a different level. Stafford's playing a lot like how Kobe played late in his career. It was like, I know everything you're going to throw at me, and I'm still physically capable of beating it. Aaron Rodgers probably knows everything, but with the Jets, it's like he can't slide enough to make it happen. Right. Stafford has an arm talent to make it happen, so he can slide, he can see it, he can see it pre-snap. It's nothing you could do that's going to confuse him.
And the other part of that is the Rams have the 4th leading rusher in the league, who just goes under the radar. Nobody ever talks about him. They don't acknowledge the fact that the Rams have a run game. So if I'm saying
Florida State boys out there doing
so if I'm saying Detroit, let's say I'm Detroit, And let's hypothetically say Philly finishes, or I'm sorry, yeah, Philly finishes with the 1, Detroit finishes with the 2, and the Rams get the last wild card spot. I know what Philly did to them a couple of weeks ago. I know what Saquon did to them a few weeks ago, but I don't want to see that team once the calendar strikes January. New season, forget wild cards, forget having to win to keep pace with the Cardinals or the Seahawks. New season, experience, you don't want to play that team. Yep, and I was about to bring that up, Mike. Montgomery's out for the season for the Lions. Aleem McNeil out for the season. Carlton Davis out for the season. On top of Aiden Hutchinson.
They lose guys for the season every game.
And now we're about to find out, right?
And I watched them. They lost a guy for a season every game I watched for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They lost Rodriguez during. So I think
they're going to go get Dalvin Cook now?
They lost a guy Thanksgiving. They lost a guy the week after that, and they lost a couple more guys this past week. So they've lost guys for the season.
Right.
When they came into the game and Thanksgiving was 7 guys on IR, including guys who were like out for the season, but they're on IR.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't have the Lions on my list. I just think that catches up at some point, especially
it has to.
Especially defensively, because, they'll put up points. They're still going to put up points. They still got Amon-Ra. They still got Reggie Bush Jr., but now he's going to have to take a bigger load, pause. And then, Khalif Raymond is hurt too, so like Detroit is just banged up all over the place. So it's not that I don't trust them. I just think that catches up at some point. Minnesota, you know how I feel about Sam Darnold. I would like to see Brian Flores get some head coaching interviews this year, some real ones, not the Rooney Rule ones. But as much as I like the Vikings, because I love Kevin O'Connell, he's a really good coach that probably doesn't get the credit that he deserves, but I'm not trusting Sam Darnold to win 3 must-win games.
But
because
that was previous regimes, and you can't say definitively that any other. There was another position group or coaching group associated with Sam Darnold that you say, you know what? I think that team put this individual player in the right position. Right? So look at Kirk Cousins in Atlanta.
I was about to bring him up.
And look at Kirk Cousins in Minnesota.
I was about to bring him up.
He was playing MVP level guaranteed. Hell, that's the reason he got $180 million from Atlanta.
But as Mike will tell you, all you got to do is turn the sky off and Kirk Cousins will fold. You know what I mean? Like Sam,
everywhere it's been, Sam Darnold has.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so no, I'm responding to your point about previous regimes, and
Sam Darnold's was never successful there. That's what I'm saying. He was never in the position.
He ain't gonna be successful now either. You know what I'm saying? And they already talking about him not being on the roster next year.
That's because somebody gonna pay him $135 million for 4 years.
No, that's because they drafted this rookie. You know what I'm saying?
That rookie only threw 20-some passes a game in Michigan. But what I'm saying, at 12-2, making big plays, it's not like they're out there Trent Dilfer dinking and dunking. You see that game against Atlanta, Justin Jefferson and Addison both had over 175 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. That's partly on the quarterback.
Minnesota could have it in front of them, though, because, they still play Detroit one more time. They still play Green Bay one more time. Minnesota's not out of this home field advantage race.
14-3 is a real likelihood for them. And that's so 1 or a 2.
Yeah, because right now, Philly's got 2 losses. Detroit has 2 losses. So if they beat Detroit head-to-head, we got to have an interesting conversation after that. If Philly drops in. But Philly, they have their 3 division games, including, at Landover, not Washington, D.C. this weekend.
Okay, so you got 5 teams.
Yep, I got 5.
I have 7. So you don't have Minnesota, correct?
I don't have Minnesota, no.
And
I don't have Kansas City. No, I have Baltimore.
You don't have Kansas City.
And I don't have Detroit.
So between the 2 of us, we got 9 total teams.
Yeah. So because I got Buffalo, Philly, Baltimore, Green Bay, and the Rams.
Okay. And you got Rams. I got KC and Minnesota.
He
So
is. He's
out of
going to have to
all the
run for his
teams that
life
we
too.
picked,
Mm-hmm.
outside of the teams that we have, who do you think is the most likely surprise? I know it's kind of like an oxymoronic.
All right, don't laugh when I
Most
say
likely
this.
surprise.
Don't laugh when I say this. I can't even get it out myself. The Chargers, man, because like I said, last episode or maybe the previous episode to that, the Chargers are one of those teams that usually you only hear this in basketball, but people will say they're built for the playoffs. The Chargers stylistically are built for the playoffs. Run the ball, tough defense, quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over. But the difference between him and somebody like a Tannehill is that Herbert can throw you back into a game if necessary.
Yeah, but do they have the playmakers at the skill positions?
Oh, they got the rookie, baby. They got the rookie, baby.
McConkey?
Yes. Yes. Ask my fantasy football team about him. But like when I look at Pittsburgh, I'm gonna do process of elimination real quick. When I look at a team like Pittsburgh, this game against Philly this past weekend is what I fear for the Steelers. Is that they're going to get into a game with a team with a defense as good as them, and they're not going to be able to just go up and down the field or make plays.
Philly, the Steelers only had the ball twice in the second half.
I know. And Philly had like a 13-minute drive or something like that.
They deliberately ran the ball, and eventually you wear it down. There's only so many guys you could put in rotation.
Yeah, I talked about Kansas City already. Quiet is kept. I know Houston's offense has been stalling, but they're still fourth in defense. So, all you need is CJ Stroud to have a game, and
throw down on the list real quick. I want to see where my outside of keep going. I don't have one.
Yeah, so Denver.
I know this is like pretty much 25% of the league out of this.
Right,
7 teams. I think your Super Bowl winner is one of these 7 teams.
Yeah, Denver is hard for me to see, and I know he's been playing well besides the other day, but it's hard for me to trust a rookie quarterback.
I don't think a rookie
on the road
never made it to the Super Bowl. So
just and that's the same thing with Jaden Daniels. As much as I love him, it's just hard for me to trust rookies to do the Eli thing. Because right now they're both the last seed. Then you got Minnesota. I already talked about. Seattle's not getting in. Geno Smith is banged up now as well. So I
like Pittsburgh. I would like Pittsburgh if they had a more consistent first down passing connection, like the way Kansas City previous years. Kansas City, Mahomes and Kelsey third down, it kept drives alive.
Right.
I like that aspect of a team. I think I think third down conversion rate is vital because it doesn't put you in a position where, like Detroit going forward on fourth down as much as they are, it kind of sends a couple of signals. Either I'm confident in my offense or I don't trust my defense, whatever the case may be. I just feel like if Freiermuth and Wilson had that 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 connection where they can keep moving the ball and they can then effectively run it, I would trust it because I think Russell's going to make the right decisions. The problem is you get a game like Philly where you get one turnover and now the other team's kind of just running the ball. Especially when you get a team in the playoffs, you're going to get a better team.
Right.
You're going to get a team that exploits whatever weakness you put on film for the 17 games prior to the game they play you in January. So That's my thing with Pittsburgh is like, I don't know if they have like the connections that you need to just overcome another team's talent.
Yeah. So Kansas City clinches home field with a win and a Buffalo loss. Pittsburgh clinches the AFC North with a win on Saturday against Baltimore. So obviously Baltimore needs some, they need to beat Pittsburgh and get some more help, but they do clinch a playoff berth with a win this weekend. And if they do lose, if Miami and Indianapolis lose, the Ravens are in, because of course the Dolphins and Colts are hanging on by a thread right now.
Yeah.
Denver,
I think the 14 teams are set on both sides of the ball. Both sides, both conferences. I think the 14 teams are set.
Denver is in with a win on Thursday night. We'll talk about that here in a quick second. And then if they do lose, they can clinch with a Miami, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. So they would need all three of those teams to lose to clinch on Sunday or this week. And then the Chargers, same scenario. They need to win plus a Miami and Indianapolis loss, or all three of those teams lose. In the NFC, Green Bay is in with a win. If they don't win, Atlanta plus the Rams losing, or Atlanta plus Seattle losing. And then Washington, they're in with a win plus a Falcon and Ram loss, a win and a Falcon and Seahawk loss. And then the other one's too long. I ain't reading all that. What up, Cups? You know what I'm saying? So Cups in the gang, Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Friday, 7:00 Eastern. So yeah, I think that the teams that we named, I don't necessarily see an outside team. I just think that the Chargers could be a factor just based on style of play more. But the problem that I have with them,
I don't like their playmakers on the outside.
Well, I don't like their secondary is what I don't like.
If you need a catch, I don't think they have. I don't think they have the playmaking ensemble.
But this is the thing.
Normal circumstances that you would encounter in a playoff game.
Yes, and
there we go.
Yes, and if I'm playing Pittsburgh, I might not need that because I can shut them down and win a 9-6 game. If I'm playing Houston, their offense ain't doing anything right now. If I'm playing Denver, we already beat them and I can shut them down. Buffalo, as long as Josh Allen ain't Superman, we got a chance. Kansas City, we could play. We played y'all to the wire twice.
And if you're a Chargers fan and you're banking on that, that's not something that occurred a lot throughout this year. Teams holding any of these AFC, because basically those are all division leaders,
right?
They haven't really done that with the Chargers, and like something I talked about for weeks. I like Justin Herbert. I just don't believe that he's a backpack guy. I just don't believe that what Mahomes does for Kansas City, Herbert should be able to do for Los Angeles, and it doesn't seem to happen as often. Maybe because Kansas City kind of keeps putting himself in this position, and it just seems like it's just part of what they do now. Because when I watch Kansas City games, it's like, it doesn't feel like Mahomes tries to run or scramble for a first down unless it's third down. And it just so happens it's third down in the second half. He's definitely doing it. But with the Chargers, I like what you're saying. I think that they are built to beat different teams throughout the week, throughout the seasons. But when it comes to the playoffs, I don't know if they have a different
gear.
Like a different gear, yes.
Yes, and don't forget, 14 regular season games, they've only given up 20 in 4 of those games. So like I said, run the ball. Don't make mistakes, which Herbert hasn't been doing for the most part this season. Get off the field. Give your offense more opportunities. The Tim Tebow game plan. Play good enough defense to keep your offense on the field to have more opportunity to get points. But speaking of which, real quick, Thursday night, the Broncos are going into LA. What say you?
I know I talked all that junk about the Chargers. I mean, that home games don't really feel like home games. I think the luster of the potential rookie of the year quarterback I'm gonna go ahead and give it to Harbaugh. Pick the battle of the coaches. I'm gonna take the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm going Chargers as well. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, something along the lines of 20-17, which will be a feather in the Chargers cap because they beat Denver the first time that they played. So that'll give them the season sweep, and that'll help as far as playoff matchup. Would you rather play Buffalo or would you rather play at Pittsburgh? I mean, I guess I would say neither for real, but if I had to choose one, I'm gonna probably deal with the Air Force Ones that I feel that I can hold to 20 or less versus the team with the dynamic quarterback that can literally put the team on his back and run me out the stadium. So we'll see. Saying Denver, I don't think want to play either one of them, but it is what it is. But so yeah, so then of course, before we get out of here, saying we got the college football playoffs starting on Friday night in South Bend, Indiana, where the Hoosiers will play the Irish for the first time since 1991. And don't forget, and I don't know why I love these stats because it doesn't really matter because none of these dudes played on those teams. But Indiana all time is 113-1 in South Bend. So, I don't know if that means anything or not, but it sounds like we may get a little bit of the elements in this game. Might be some snow going on.
Yeah, so, I saw something like 25 degrees with these games. These games started in this region, the Northeast, like the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, like the games in this region. Supposed to be like 25, and I think the game out west is like 60 something.
Yeah. And, so here we go. The winner of this game between Indiana and Notre Dame will play the Georgia Bulldogs.
What's Carson Beck's status? Is he out?
We don't know. We still waiting to hear. Nope, no announcement yet. I know that they said that, yeah, the team on his back, man, he into that. They said that Carson Beck was his parents or whoever were trying to get a second opinion, for the UCL or whatever. So they still got time to rest. So, we'll see.
The only time I ever heard this UCL injury is when Brock Purdy got it.
And he was done.
In 2023, and he was out for 6 or 7 months.
Right. So
that was quicker than they projected. So
are you giving the Hoosiers a chance?
I'm giving them a chance. Just because, like I said, they're playing with house money. Their coach is the ultimate confident competitor. Notre Dame being in this position, we've seen them in the college football playoff.
Facts.
They didn't do well. So I'm giving Indiana a shot. And I'm also kind of giving Indiana a shot because I want new blood to be kind of, propelled into the conversation as far as like deserving and worthy, things of that nature. I think if Notre Dame wins, it's just par for the course. Now, I want a little controversy. I want a double digit seed to
double D's. I like that.
Yeah, that too. Pause. Unpause. Yeah, so like I want to see that. And I think Indiana, their defensive front solid. I know their quarterback has been mentioned as a potential one of the NFL ready quarterbacks in the.
I like him, but speaking of which, did you hear what he said today?
No, I didn't.
They were talking to him about Friday night possibly being his last college football game, and he said, "Nah, my last college football game is after the 4th game."
That's what I'm saying. That confidence is kind of just matriculating to the players, and people believe in it. And we saw how Notre Dame reacted. Granted, only lost Northern Illinois. It was a weird loss at home, 16-14. So it wasn't like Northern Illinois was on fire and just couldn't win in the shootout. It's like you got, you kind of like succumb to like the pressure of this other team.
It was 16-14, and I believe it was like a 56-yard field goal.
Yeah, it was a long field goal. Yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, I like Indiana in this game.
Okay.
Just as a coin flip, just strategy wise, like I said, I like their confidence. They only lost to Ohio State. They won 11 games. I get it. We can go through the Venn diagram of who played who played what where, and get the whiteboards out and draw everything out. But
Transitive property.
They won 11 games.
Well, I keep hearing people compare, that's what they're bringing up is we saw Indiana go up against a real team when they went to Columbus. And as I always say, time after time, it was 7-7 in the second quarter until the punter dropped that snap, gave Ohio State first and goal at the 7, game over right then and there. Yep, momentum was gone. But I think that this game is closer to the Indiana-Michigan game, where Indiana got out of there with a 20-15 win. Everybody gave them crap because you're supposed to beat Michigan by more than that. Ask Ohio State about it. So, Notre Dame has the number 3 pass defense in the nation, which might not matter depending on the weather in this game. But it does matter because all this talk about Indiana's weak schedule, Notre Dame's the number 3 pass defense playing stalwarts like Navy, Army, Northern Illinois, Texas A&M. There's a whole lot of teams on this schedule that don't pass the ball. When they did play teams that could pass the ball, when they played Louisville, they won, but Louisville put up some points. USC put up 35 on them with their backup quarterback. So I don't know if Notre Dame's secondary is as good as advertised. Now, what Notre Dame does have is they have Riley Leonard, who's been running the ball all down everybody's throat all season. They got my guy, Jeremiah Love, one of the running backs that I love in college football this year, 949 yards, but he's questionable, it sounds like. I think he's going to play, though. It's the playoff.
You're not sitting out this game.
Yeah, you're not sitting out. And the other reason why I don't want to compare this to the Ohio State game is because outside of running plays and Riley Leonard getting loose, Notre Dame doesn't have the explosiveness that Ohio State had. There's no Jeremiah Smith, there's no Emeka Buka, so on and so forth. So, when I look at this game, it's going to come down to Aiden Fisher on Indiana's defense because Indiana all throughout the season against the weak schedule only gave up 2.5 yards per carry. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Indiana's going to need turnovers, which is a good thing because they rank 5th nationally. Their turnover margin plus 15. They don't need to get 5 turnovers. If they could force
2 or 3 timely ones.
Yes, 2 or 3 timely ones, maybe in the red zone even. But I'm going to go with Notre Dame in a nail biter. I'm going to call it 27-24, something along those lines. Then, let's go late night for a second just because of the order of my notes. We got Ohio State and Tennessee playing in the game that's going to piss Oregon off because they got to play the winner of it. It is in Columbus. It is at nighttime. And I will say, I do think that the weather thing is a little bit overplayed. Like a lot of people are running with the Tennessee. How are they going to react to cold weather? It gets pretty damn cold in Tennessee too.
Yeah, it's not that far from Ohio. Literally,
right,
like 1 state south.
Now, people like me for years have been clamoring and lamenting that I want these SEC teams to go north. Had nothing to do with weather per se. It's just the fact that all these bowl games are in the South. Even and Georgia.
Domes.
Well, even Georgia, right? Like we just talked about how Notre Dame and Indiana plays Georgia. The winner plays Georgia. That game is at the Sugar Bowl. Down in New Orleans, down in the Dome. You know what I mean? So I'm loving the fact that Tennessee has to go north. But I think that Tennessee has a chance to win this game because, one, what the hell is Ohio State's psyche at this point? All they've heard for the last 2 weeks is your coach is gone if he loses. Your coach been probably dyeing his beard more than he's been actually drawing up plays. You got James Pierce. Tennessee's got James Pierce coming in, who I think is going to be a top 10 draft pick, in the spring. So he's going to wreak havoc all over Ohio State's beat-up offensive line. Center out, left tackle out, bad recipe when you're playing against Tennessee. The difference between Tennessee and Michigan is that Michigan has the other parts of the front seven that'll give you trouble. Tennessee is just the defensive line. So if you can hold them at bay somewhat, Ohio State will have time to get the ball to Ibuka and Smith because Tennessee secondary is the weakness of the team. But then on the other side of the ball, Ohio State has to deal with Dylan Sampson. 1,483 yards, 22 touchdowns. Another guy that probably should have been in the Heisman conversation, but since we said the name Nico so much, he couldn't get in the conversation.
Yeah.
So as I look at this, Dante Thornton, this was the wildest thing I saw, right, when I was looking at this, because I was like, he averages 26 yards a reception, and Tennessee ain't undefeated? And then I was like, oh, only 25 catches, though.
So you got to throw him the ball more.
Yeah, you got to throw him the ball more. So Ohio State on the season, they give up 97 yards per game on the ground. They lead the nation, only giving up 10.9 points. So give me the under in this game. Give me the under, and I'm going to take Ohio State 24-17.
I want to take Ohio State. But just watching Will Howard the last game against Michigan, felt like he had happy feet in the pocket. He wasn't getting the ball downfield. It felt a lot like how Kirk Cousins looked last night in Las Vegas. It's like you have talent on the outside. Those guys were open. You just didn't pull the trigger because the game, as every minute ticked down, first half went by. Now you're in the second half. The game is still 10-10. It's tight. Michigan's playing loose. They're running the ball effectively. It felt like a lot of times when he was given opportunities to make throws and make plays, he just wasn't doing it. So I think the stink of losing to Michigan the last time he was on that field, losing to Oregon. I think they lost to Oregon. Did they lose at home?
It was at Oregon. Yeah,
at Oregon. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think losing at home to Michigan, the aftermath, the conversation, like you said, surrounding Ryan Day, the transfers. I just feel like Tennessee, there's no expectations on Tennessee to beat Ohio State. Their coach's job isn't on the line. Guys are going to transfer or not. But I think with Ohio State, they're going to lose players in waves if they were to lose this game.
So you remember,
and I think that pressure is weighing on guys. I think you're gonna get a couple like silly face mask penalties. You're gonna get some silly unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. You're gonna get a couple of things on Ohio State that are indicative of a team that's playing with a different level of pressure.
So you remember earlier I said something along the lines of, hey, here's a stat, but none of these players necessarily played in these games. Well, here's another one for you. Ohio State, and I know this is not a bowl game technically, it's a playoff game, but the point still remains. Ohio State is 1-13 in postseason games against the SEC all time. And then if you flip it back, Ryan Day, of course, lost the national title game to Bama. They lost to Missouri last year, even though, Kyle McCord was gone. He went into the portal and everything.
They lost
to Georgia.
Florida.
They lost it. Well, I'm just talking about Ryan Day. They lost to Georgia on that last second field goal. And where was that game? It was in the compressor down in Atlanta. It was a neutral site game, apparently. But but yeah, I like Ohio State provided that their heads are in the right place, which we won't know until they step on the field.
Yeah.
Then you come down here for the warmest game of the weekend. 60 degrees up in Austin, Texas, they say. The Clemson Tigers are coming through, and the reason that I like this game is because all the old cliches exist, right? Texas made it to the playoff last year and got done up by Michael Penix. They got a nasty taste in their mouth, pause, from what Georgia did to them twice this year. You got Clemson coming in, throw the records out. They're 0-0 now. This is the second season. Dabo even took a dude in the transfer portal this week. But the one thing I will say about this game, South Carolina sitting at home pissed. They're like, yo, we just beat Clemson 2 weeks ago on their field, and we wish we had the SEC schedule that Texas got away with. Yep. And that's my problem with Texas because, you look at Texas and it's the same thing. They only give up 12.5 points per game. Clemson puts up 33.5, but back to Texas. They only gave up the 30 to Georgia, the first time that they played. But also all around the media, all around Texas, all I've been hearing all week is it time to go to Arch? Quinn Ewers is about to transfer and potentially go to North Carolina, potentially go back to Ohio State. So I don't know what the distraction level is. I also know that Dabo Swinney, as much as I despise him, he don't fuck around in the playoffs.
He's a big game coach.
He's a big game coach. 9-1 in the ACC title game. Ask Nick Saban about Dabo in big games. So, the problem for Clemson, though, is that out of the 18 ACC teams, they were 14th against the run. And the way that you stop Texas is to make Quinn Ewers have to make quick, fast decisions. And you can only do that if you can slow the run game down. So I do expect Texas to put up points. But I also expect Texas to fold because they don't have very much experience beating good teams this year. So I'm going to take Clemson in the upset, 27-20.
I like that pick. K. Klubnik faced off against Quinn Ewers in the high school state
Austin
championship.
Guy. Mm-hmm.
And K. Klubnik's team won because Quinn Ewers threw a couple of bad interceptions.
Yeah.
I think the conversation about him transferring, I think the conversation about his draft position, I think the conversation around the lack of strength in their schedule, I think is all going to come to head. I think having Arch Manning there. I know Sark went to Arch in the Georgia game because he needed a spark.
We argued about it
because, like I said, I don't think it's such a good precedent. Put a package in. I think
which it looks like they did.
I think every backup quarterback that has, if you have a back like very similar to, I'll go back to Mike Vick. We had Chris Chandler as a starting quarterback. Mike Vick was a young talent. Put a package in for him. Put a package in to where you can get this dynamic talent on the field for 3 or 4 plays a game. See what it can do. But I think the losses to Georgia and this narrative that you can't beat a tough team. Clemson is like I said, you said Dabo 9-1 in the ACC championship game. That means he's been there 10 times. That's a lot. That's a lot of experience for a coach. That's a lot of experience that he bring to these guys. And he has a bunch of Clemson guys. He doesn't have a lot of transfers, so he has a lot of guys that bought into his program. Whereas, like I said, Texas, their starting quarterback is rumored to be leaving in the transfer portal. So give me Clemson. 27-20 seems reasonable. I'll go 31-24, something like that, 31-27. But like I said.
Okay. Yeah, I've been seeing actually, so I'll let you start off Penn State and SMU while I do something real quick. But the winner of that Clemson-Texas game, as you can see, gets the Sun Devils in Georgia down in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. So whoever wins that game is going to have home field advantage, basically, over the team that had the bye. But
Clemson going to have a substantial home field advantage because even their travel won't be long. So everything will be quick for them. Penn State, SMU.
The winner gets Boise.
All right, I've already picked 2 upsets. Well, I think I picked all 3 because I picked Tennessee as well. I'll go chalk on this one. I think it's a toss-up. I like the fact that the College Football Playoff Committee kept SMU in because, like I said, they lost 2 games by a total of 6 points, and they were tied going into the final minute of each one of these games. I just think Penn State just will have too much. I think defensively, they have a potential top guy off the edge, a lot like Micah Parsons, wears the same number. I think Drew Aller saying that he's coming back next year. I think that kind of calms some things. Like I said, they did lose their backup quarterback. They had some packages for him, but I imagine that any of those running quarterback packages, if you want to call that play, you can just snap it directly to a running back and get the same impact if you want Eller off the field or even another guy that can potentially throw the ball. So I think James Franklin, if he's smart, he'll adjust. But yeah, give me Penn State. Like I said, I think these games are gonna be nail biters. I can't foresee any real blowouts.
So if I had to choose one that has blowout potential, I would say it could be Notre Dame and Indiana. Just going back to, the whole, they got a lot of James Madison players that are going up against a super talented team. So there's the potential there. If Texas comes to play and their defense is for real, they could blow out Clemson, if it all comes together, but I just don't think it will. But yeah, I got SMU actually, and this is another one of those conversations where people are saying it's going to be 25 degrees. What is SMU going to do? Dallas gets snow. Cut it out. First of all, you know what I'm saying? That's first of all. Yeah. Kevin Jennings is, how can I word this? He's the Energizer Bunny, if you will. When SMU looks like they're in trouble, he pulls the rabbit out his hat. We saw it against Clemson in the ACC championship game when they fell behind. Brought them all the way back, tied the game, and then gave up a big kickoff return that set up a game-winning field goal. So when you look at who SMU lost to, like you said, 2 losses by 6 points. One of them was to 2-loss BYU, who probably had a great argument to be in this playoff if they played in a different conference than the Big 12.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then
one loss BYU in the Big 12 championship, I think they're in.
Yeah, they probably would have been in. And I had talked about them.
Random hot streak in the history of sports, like literally the hottest of hot streaks ever.
Right. And that's the problem.
Team, yeah.
And that's the problem with the SEC. Teams like Texas get to say, look at who I lost to, because these teams were overinflated, whereas BYU, any loss is going to be looked at as a disappointment. Same thing with SMU. You lost to a Big 12 team. How good can you be? You lost to this 3-4 loss Clemson team. How good can you be? Especially when we saw what Georgia did to Clemson to start the season. But Penn State, Abdul Carter is going to have to take over this game on the defensive line, another top NFL draft pick. But there is that nasty little thing about James Franklin in big games. And the Penn State defense was what I thought we could lay our hat down on and say, this is going to be the best unit in this game. But then I just saw them give up 45 to Oregon. So, look, I like Andrew Koldenicki. He was almost the West Virginia head coach, but he didn't want to leave from what I heard. I think that he's going to come up with a good game plan. I think SMU is just going to make an extra play or two. And I think this is going to be a 38-35 win for SMU. And as we look here, since we did it for the NFL real quick before we get out of here, I wanted to pull up the college odds as well, because I know Mr. Logical's into that kind of thing. Yeah, so as you can see, Oregon, it's scary. Plus 325 is your favorite. And the reason that I say it's scary is because I don't know. I never really thought about this before until this season. It's so hard to go undefeated. So it almost might behoove you to take the loss, know what that feels like, and now you get into these one and done situations and you're fighting and scrapping for your season. It's going to be tough. Not even because of any team that they're going to play, but just themselves maintaining the standard that they've kept all year.
Yeah, a loss will make you, like I paraphrasing Greg Popovich, like sometimes winning that game on the last second shot you kind of forget how we get in this position to be where we need a last second shot to win. You don't do a lot of evaluation of how you got in a position to we could potentially lose. When you win, you just evaluate the things that you did down the stretch to help you win. You'll go like, oh, you got a steal here. Or like, so with football, you're like, oh, we got the key stop here. We got the punt block here. But then you look at, okay, well, those 3 first half drives when we went 3 and out.
Mm-hmm.
Or the time we couldn't get the play in and we got a 12 man in the huddle penalty on 4th and 1. We had to go back to 4th and 6. We had to punt it. You don't look at that when you win. When you win, you look at the things that help you win. When you lose, you'll evaluate like, hey, do we need this many different player personnel packages going in at once? You know, do we need to sub out 4 defensive linemen because when you did that in the loss, you ended up with 12 men on the field? You know, stuff like that. I think you can evaluate that you would evaluate in a loss. But I think Dan Lanning keeps him focused in Oregon. You know, his name's always mentioned with new head coaching vacancies, whether it's in the NFL or, you know, college football. So I think he keeps him focused. I saw the video when he was playing Jump Around. So when they went into Wisconsin, they were playing Jump Around.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I want the song to motivate you and not to intimidate you. So when Wisconsin, they were playing Jump Around, the Oregon players, because they had heard it all week long at practice. So it's like, when you hear this song, I want you to, so like it triggered them to like take back, like, this is your fight song for right now. Nah, it's ours.
All right. So how about this, Mr. Logical? Like all right, here we go. I got to ask you this before we get out of here.
All right.
How many teams on this list can win the national title?
See, this is different because I'm kind of wanting certain teams to lose. That
don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't bring. Hit me with it. You hit me with it. Realistically, man, 3. Oregon. The quarterback situation of Georgia does bother me, but they had Stetson Bennett, and he's not like a super dynamic quarterback. I don't know what this backup experience level is. I don't know if he's like a 3rd or 4th year transfer or whatever. Because if it's UCL, only time I've even heard of this injury is when Brock Purdy had it, like I said, for San Francisco.
And he was championship game against Philly.
I can't imagine that Carson Beck's UCL injury is a week-to-week thing. So I without the uncertainty of the quarterback position, I'm surprised their odds are even that high, considering none of us know what the quarterback looking like. But I say Oregon. I know I picked against Notre Dame, but I think if they do beat Indiana, it's
they would get Georgia in the second round.
They would get Georgia in the second round. If they get through that, then it's a wrap. So I say 3 tops.
I'm thinking 4.
2 and a possible.
I'm thinking 4. I got Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. You know, and Ohio State is obviously the long shot, you know, just from, like we said, we don't even know where their mind state is right now. But they're the most talented team, probably, you know, as far as just player rating, skill, all that kind of stuff like that. So I got to give them a puncher's chance, especially if they do get past Tennessee, you can bet your ass they're going to be motivated to play Oregon in that next round. You know what I mean? So even if they're
on NBA Cup real quick, you see the update?
Yeah, the Bucks. The
Bucks are the NBA Cup champions.
Yeah, look at Doc Rivers. Look at Doc Rivers turning it around. I'm gonna give him his name back. He Doc again. You know what I'm saying? Until the playoffs when he choke again. But anyway,
OKC falling in the pressure moment yet again.
And then you got Wake Forest coach Dave Clawson stepping down after 11 seasons due to the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. But he's going to stay on as the special advisor to the vice president and director of athletics. Mike Norvell is giving Florida State back $4.5 million.
I don't know who does that.
Well, I know with Jim Harbaugh, Michigan kind of gave him an ultimatum of, you're going to get fired if we don't restructure your contract. So Harbaugh was more like, all right, like, I don't want to lose my job, take my money. Whereas Norvell, it sounds like he actually initiated this. $4.5 million. And yes, Darvin Ham is still undefeated as a coach in the NBA Cup. Last thing from me. Saturday, my sickos out there, Saturday at noon and at 3:30 Eastern, we got a doubleheader on ABC. That doubleheader is South Dakota going to Montana State. And then the second game, South Dakota State, the reigning two-time champion Jackrabbits, going into the Fargo Dome to play against North Dakota State. Semi-final football, baby.
FCS.
Yes, sir. With 24 teams in the playoff, by the way.
They figured it out. It's not about TV ratings. It's about crowning champion.
Yeah. So we will be back Friday, with NFL picks. Some last-minute college football playoff cleanup. Maybe some association for you. You know what I'm saying? Congrats to the Milwaukee Bucks, for doing what no one said they could. Anything is possible! You know what I'm saying? But, he is the even kill. He is Mr. Logical. He does not want you to bring feelings to fact fights.
Don't do it.
And I am 2-5, unorthodox as they come. Mr. Logical was like, what? The Rams? You know what I'm saying? He wasn't ready for that.
He rationalized it, though. I didn't argue with it.
But we'll be back. We love you. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. And while you at it, do all those good things. Peace.